Today, I wish to talk about the time a tantric ritual turned me into a magnet. I imagine most will not believe this experience of mine that I am about to relay to you. I can only do my best to describe what it felt like to me. You can decide whether you think I am simply insane or this was just some trick of the mind. This particular ritual I had done hundreds of times over the span of a few years, becoming more transformative and powerful each time I did it. The particular device you use to do this ritual I will not mention, as I do not want anyone to be put off the usage of such a divine instrument. The reason this ritual went wrong is entirely due to my own ignorance and egotism. I had been cautioned against not consuming sacred plants before engaging such rituals. This is because when you do a ritual with a ritual implement, you become the implement and the implement becomes you, and to introduce a third party such as a sacred plant creates a lot of static noise that can very much confuse your signal. Nonetheless, the fool that I am, I consumed the plant, allowed myself to adjust, having a good time playing guitar. I got up and went into my room, noticing the implement. Without a second thought, I intuitively picked up the implement, and I was immediately struck by the most powerful magnetic energy I've ever experienced in my entire life. I was a piece of metal and the implement a neodymium magnet. Violently pulling my arm back and forth, I tried to ease the energy and it only grew more wrathful. I started panicking and said to myself, I cannot do this, I need to disengage. I tried to do a quick prayer to disengage the entanglement, but the implement had a mind of its own. I managed to put it back down on its stand and basically ran out of my bedroom and closed the door. Then all hell broke loose. My heart started beating incredibly fast, more so than any panic attack I've ever had. My chest and heart was burning with agony. I was truly convinced that I was about to die. I tried to pace back and forth, but this made my heart even worse. My limbs were dead, pins and needles, weird electric jolts going throughout my body. Almost fainting, I fell onto my couch and began using all the energy I had left to calm my breathing. After an eternity, my heart began to slow a little. As I laid there, I could feel this immense magnetic charge almost pulling me off the couch back towards the implement. I have never experienced anything like this. I truly thought the implement was going to break through my bedroom wall and attack me. I got up and tried to pace back and forth in my living room. I felt as if something was leading me back and forth, like it had a leash on me and was pulling at me so hard that I would stumble as I paced the living room. I kept trying to rip myself away from the grasp of this magnetic power, but there was nothing I could do. I started grabbing at my hair, and as I did, it felt as if my hair was rising in my hand like a handful of snakes. Wherever I touched my head, I would feel this horrific burning pain. I sat back down and started saying, please detach me from this energy. Please let go, but nothing worked. I picked up my metal bottle of water and it felt like it was stuck to my hand. It was warping in my palms. It had this strong gravitational pull back towards the floor, making it heavy and difficult to handle. I could feel what seemed like a warm hand grabbing at me, trying to pull me upwards. I would freak out and flinch, trying to rip my hand away from it, but after a few seconds it would happen again. At this point I was almost totally psychotic, started thinking I would never be normal again. I almost screamed and I got up trying to leave my house, wanting to run out onto the street to get as far away from the implement as possible. As I opened the door, the metal door handle stuck to my hand and began feeling as if it was warping and rising like a snake. I cannot truly convey how horrified I was at this point. As I took a step out onto my balcony, I got this piercing ringing noise in my ears and a migraine that was absolutely agonizing. I touched my ears thinking they were bleeding. I ran back into the house and the ringing subsided. This whole incident began around 1 a.m. and I was battling this strange magnetic charge until 7:30 in the morning. Everything I picked up had the same gravitational pull, like I had to battle gravity every time I lifted something up from the ground. With With this implement, you were meant to let it absorb your negative energy before then grounding it. It was as if, because of my stopping the ritual, this unprocessed energy was in everything I touched. Everything was magnetized. Everything was energetically charged. Everything was overwhelmingly powerful, as if it took on the form of the implement itself. From books to my guitar to my phone to every single thing I picked up had the same incredibly strong energy to it. So the implement basically possessed everything I got a hold of, including myself, as I paced back and forth with my back arched towards the ground, my feet feeling like I had to pull them from quicksand just to take the next step. The only thing that kept me from completely losing my mind that night was repeating to myself that it was all just energy, that I was not possessed by some sort of unknown entity, and that the magnetic charge was my unprocessed energy violently pulsing throughout my body. I knew this because I had previously read about the magnetic charge of this particular implement, and that there has been many reports of people suffering psychosis-like symptoms after improper handling of the implement, often stating that they felt as if something had taken over their body and possessed them, but mostly this feeling subsided for them after a short while or even a couple of days. I felt this magnetism myself for the next 3 to 4 days, and I knew I had to face up to the implement and do a ritual so as to ground this energy, lest it turn into some kind of illness or worse. Upon walking towards the shrine I do my rituals at, with the implement within its case in my bag, I began feeling nauseous and as if I was going to faint. I kept having to sit down after a few minutes of walking. It was a very cold day, and yet I began dripping with sweat. This walk that usually takes me all of 20 minutes on this day had taken over an hour by the time I reached the shrine. Terrified but convinced I had no choice, I began reciting mantras and prayers before engaging the ritual. This time I was obviously in a sober state and immediately began to feel relief as I carried out the ritual. Warm energy began flowing from me into the implement, and the ritual was a success. When I got home, I noticed the magnetism was still somewhat present with each thing I touched. I had to do the ritual once a day for the next week, and finally the magnetic charge subsided. And so throughout that week, I'd pick up my guitar and had the same thing. It had this very strange gravitational pull, like I had to fight to lift it up and then hold the thing, and it just felt very strange when I tried to play it. I had to disengage it with incense and do all sorts of things. Look, I don't expect anyone to believe this story. Prior to this experience, I would not have believed it either, but I'm sure there are some people out there who have had such experiences with Tantra that would know the validity of what I went through. Nothing in today's world prepares us for experiencing such strange magic, so I understand why people would laugh this story off as being a lie, but I would implore people to research about Tantra, energy and psychotic symptoms, improper rituals. Do not underestimate the power of these ancient practices. Always do these things with a proper guide, and never mess around with anything that alters the mind before doing Tantra. Even masters have lost their mind doing so. Kundalini must rise slowly through consistent meditation. These types of Tantra may create a fast track to so-called enlightenment, but you may lose your mind or worse in doing so. Stay grounded. Om Mani Padme Hum.